Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. You are listening to a podcast by Pastor Eric Cepin and Pastor Andy Littleton. If you enjoy Faith Over Breakfast, we encourage you to rate it on the Apple Podcast app, on Spotify, or Google Play. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. My name is Pastor. Well, first name is not Pastor, but my name is Eric Cepin, and I am one of the pastors at the Village Church in Tucson, Arizona. And across from me is my youth pastor from the mid to late 80s, Rick Drost, who's a supporter of the show and asked many questions. Rick, this was fun.
It was. We had a good discussion.
It was.
You asked me some very good questions that made me open up.
Yeah. It was really fun to hear your story, and I'm really excited about my church hearing your story because you had, I think one of the things, and I didn't say this in the podcast, but I do want to say it as people go into, like so I guess from 87 when you got there until 1993, you were this steady presence in my life. Mm-hmm. And I was involved at ministry, and you were always there, and you were teaching, and I was on your leadership things, and I just really appreciate your commitment to it's like Eugene Peterson, like you're just the long obedience in the same direction, and I want to thank you publicly for that. So thank you very much, and I hope people enjoy the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Well, hey, Rick.
Hey there.
This is awesome. You are across from me in the podcast studio, the chaos and mess of the Faith Over Breakfast studio.
It looks great.
Yeah, we're not having breakfast. We're having afternoon water.
Water, yeah.
So, Rick, most people don't even know you other than you get mentioned sometimes on the podcast because you email us a lot with lots of questions. So you're responsible for some level of the content. So maybe you could just give us a little bit of your bio and how you got into ministry and what you're doing in life now. And just let's let people get to know you.
You just want to hear everything about me, right?
I do so much.
Okay.
Want to hear about you, at least so people know who you are.
Sure. Well, I was born in Phoenix, Arizona. My parents moved there, and I was born a couple months after they got there. And I grew up there and then went to college and seminary at Trinity.
Okay, so just for pause, like Phoenix, where did you live in Phoenix? Because we're talking a long time ago. It's like Central Phoenix.
Northwest Phoenix.
Okay, you're in Northwest Phoenix.
Yeah,
All
right. Near I-17.
Okay.
And Cactus Road.
Okay.
And I love it up there. That's a great area to grow up in, and it was a wonderful childhood.
Yeah. Where did you go to church in Phoenix? Do you remember?
We as a young kid, we went to First Evangelical Free Church, which is in downtown Phoenix.
Okay.
But then a new pastor came to town, and he planted a church in Northwest Phoenix called Desert Hills Evangelical Free.
Okay, and that's where you were at.
That's right.
So you left Phoenix to go to college, or
to go to college, and I met my wife there.
Where'd you go to college?
Trinity College.
Unless you went to the same
Deerfield,
place?
Illinois.
Yeah, so you went from really hot to really cold.
Really cold, and you had to get used to the snow and the ice and all of that,
So you met your wife like right away when you hit the college, or did it take some time?
Our January of our freshman year, we met. We were on the gospel team together, which was the college. Part of the requirement at the college is we had to do a service project of some sort. And so she was a singer and piano. Well, no, she wasn't the piano player. She was a singer for a gospel team that went to different churches and represented the school and sang. And then that team also wanted to do drama, and so I came on board. That's where
you came in, because I don't recall you being the singer.
No, not at all.
So you met her your freshman year, and how long before you guys got married?
We got married after our sophomore year.
Oh, so you did what I wish I had done, which is married during college and just do the college life together.
Yeah.
Was that fun, or were there some challenges?
There were some challenges, but her family and my family really supported us well. I mean, I thought once I got married, I thought I was going to have to pay for my education, for my college education. My parents said, no, we still got that covered.
Oh, that's sweet of them. That's really sweet of them.
And then her parents helped us buy a mobile home that we lived in. And we just had to pay him a monthly thing. But that was nothing. That is awesome. Yeah, they treated us really well.
So your wife's name is Brenda. And what was her major in college?
She was elementary ed music.
Okay. And yours?
I was history, biblical studies.
Oh. So what kind of history? American history? It
was just plain history.
Vanilla history.
Vanilla history, yeah. So I had to take classes in a number of different.
Yeah, okay. So, general history.
Yeah.
So you graduated, you both graduated at the same time?
Yep.
And did you then stay for seminary, or did you come back? Or?
Yeah, we graduated in 80.
Okay, 1980.
And then went straight to seminary, and my wife got a job teaching.
Okay.
And it took me 4 years to do seminary.
Okay.
So in 84, we were done with that, and I was looking for a job, and the high school that I went to in Phoenix Christian High School, called me and said, hey, we hear you've graduated. Do you want a job?
So Phoenix Christian High School is located where?
On Indian School Road and 19th Avenue, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, I took that job. I taught freshman Bible for 3 years at Phoenix Christian High.
Okay.
And that was all Old Testament. I love the Old Testament.
Very cool.
That was a lot of fun. That was great. And while I was doing that, I was the volunteer youth pastor at Desert Hills, the church that I grew up at.
Oh, well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So did you bring your drama into teaching Bible?
You bet.
Yes. Do you remember any things you did to bring the Old Testament to life for high school kids?
It was mainly in my teaching style.
Yes.
Just acted out the stories, became Jeremiah, became, the person that was and was teaching them in that way.
That's very cool. So you're doing that. So why did you stop after 3 years teaching?
Because.
So this would be 1980. So you graduated 80,
and then 84. So this would be 87.
Okay, 1987.
In 87, I began to realize that at Phoenix Christian High, I was Mr. Drost.
Mr. Drost.
I hated that. At Desert Hills, as a volunteer youth pastor, I was Rick.
Nice.
And I loved that.
You love being Rick.
I loved, the kids really connecting with me and feeling like I was a friend to them,
right?
Not someone who could give them detention,
right? Right,
or a bad grade,
or tests.
Yeah, right. So because of that play, I said, I think I'd really rather be a youth pastor.
Okay.
And First Free here in Tucson was looking for a youth pastor at the time. Steve Tracy was stepping aside to do college ministry, and so they were looking for someone, and I had just hosted the Free Church Youth Conference at Desert Hills that summer.
And I was at that.
Were you
yes,
really?
Yes, I was.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, and so Dave Rodquist, he mentioned he was there at that conference, and he came back to First Free and said, "Boy, that's a good guy. Let's check out Rick."
Nice.
And so that's how I got the job at First Free here in Tucson.
Right. And so you moved your family, which was just you and Brenda at the time, or
yes,
yeah, you moved.
No, and Josh.
Okay,
Josh, our oldest.
Your oldest. How old was he then?
He was only 1 year old.
1 year old.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do remember a baby. I have vague memories back then. Okay, so you came down, and Steve Tracy, he moved to college, but he wasn't there for a long time, right?
No, he wasn't.
He left a year later, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know what's interesting? Steve and Celeste,
yes.
I have a hard time calling her Celeste because I knew her as Gay.
Right.
Because Steve and Gay went to Phoenix Christian High with me. They were there the same time I was a student.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It is such a small world.
It is.
It really is a small world. Wow. And they're in Phoenix now, or they were in Phoenix for a while, because he was at Phoenix Seminary.
Okay.
But anyway, so you take over the youth ministry in 1987 at what is now the Journey, but is E-Free, as we all remember it.
Yeah.
And this isn't your first youth group, but this is your first paid youth group.
That's correct. Yeah.
What was it like kind of stepping from being a volunteer pastor into like the whole staff world, and now you're the youth pastor? And
it was gratifying. I felt really comfortable in that job, and there was more to it. I mean, there was more on my plate because it was a bigger youth group. Right. It was I had more responsibilities in the general church setting, but it was very enjoyable. Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah, so we met a week ago, and so this is really where I was introduced to you, because I don't remember you at the conference.
Okay.
I may have remembered you at the conference back then, but I certainly don't now. But one of the things that you were reflecting, and I can agree with you, is when I think back to these times, it's hard to remember the details.
Right.
But 1987, I think do you remember if you came in the summer or if you came?
Yeah, I believe, I came, it was probably August.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I didn't start the school year as a teacher,
right.
So
that's how I remember it, because it would have been, I think, the beginning of my junior year. Mm-hmm. That's because I remember all the introductions to Rick and you, like this transition from Steve to you and that kind of stuff. Thankfully, I only had Steve Tracy for 1 year, and as a freshman, I was like not really wanting to be part of the youth group, and I was very depressed my sophomore year. So you were like, kind of when I think about, I told you this, but I'll say it again on air, is just that I used you as a marker for the place where I really began to think I could be in ministry and care for people and be part of something, and I want to do something for God in my life.
That's awesome.
That is like that. Those, my junior and senior year of high school, were a big part of that. I don't think I was wondering, do you have any memories of me at all when you think back to those things? Because I actually don't.
Not a whole lot. Yeah, no, I know you, but I can't think of any specific. Yeah. I think I do remember us once playing basketball on the basketball court.
Okay.
But that's...
So I had a memory, and this is not high school, but I had forgotten it. But you and I played volleyball.
Oh.
In a volleyball league for 2 years together.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I love volleyball, so that makes sense.
Right? I remember that. I was like, oh, yeah, we played volleyball together. I feel like you were always engaged with people, and you were, one of the things we talked about is you just know so many people. Yeah. Because you're a little different than what I would call the normal youth pastor, in that you stuck around for a long period of time. Youth pastoring was not really a stepping stone for you to some other head pastor, right, or collegeman, whatever. You weren't moving up. You love kids.
Yeah, I was there 17 years
at E-Free.
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah.
So I mean, you and I'm assuming you performed some of the weddings, many of the weddings of people that you
a couple. Yeah,
and so you get to see their kids, and my goodness, wow. So 17 years at E-Free. And then you said to plant a church when we talked last.
Right. The church hired a new senior pastor, and he had a particular guy that he wanted to run the youth, who is now the senior pastor at the Journey.
Okay. All right.
And so he asked me to go up back to Phoenix and plant a church in on South Mountain.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
we didn't get to talk about this much, but you said you kind of ran up against, when did that end? Like that ended 2020, the church plant, or no?
Oh, no.
When did that end?
It started in 2003.
Okay.
And at 2006, 7 or 8.
Okay.
I think we ended it.
So you had this like 4 years of church planting.
Yeah.
What was that like? Like what was, because that's a big shift.
It was. And I was out of my element.
Okay.
I mean, I'm naturally an introvert.
Okay.
And so I think to be a church planter, you have to have some extra. You've got to want to go out and meet people.
Yeah.
And I'd rather sit behind my desk and prepare the sermon.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So can you talk to me a little bit about like, okay, so you're an introvert, but you like kids.
I like kids, and I like being up on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
and that's
a performer.
strange. I'm a performer, but I'm an introvert.
Yeah, my wife is a little bit that way too.
Okay.
My daughter teases her that she puts on her performance voice when she preaches.
Okay, yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, I have no problem being up on stage and
Right.
talking to people, talking to a large group, and even interacting with them.
Right.
But sitting down at dinner to a bunch of people I don't know,
Yeah.
I struggle with that.
Yeah. So what do you think God, that obviously is one thing God taught you, but as you did 4 years of church planting, what do you feel like God was working into your life in those 4 years? Like,
I think, I honestly believe that he gave me a vision for what that church should have been, and I tried to develop it, and I found out in that time that convincing and helping people to understand my vision was something that is absolutely necessary, but very, very difficult.
yeah.
And so that's where I think we sort of failed a little. The name of the church was Desert Mosaic.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I chose Mosaic is because, well, as you know, we adopted our 3 children.
Right.
Joshua is American Indian, Caleb is African American, and Hadassah is Hispanic. So we wanted our church to be multicultural
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
And we made that as part of our vision.
Right.
And I had one leader in the church, one adult male who came on right from the start, who questioned me about that. He goes, why do you want to reach out to the African American community? Well, and I'm thinking, we're in South Phoenix. This is where African Americans live. This is where Hispanic people live. I mean, why wouldn't we be reaching out to them? You
Sure.
know, it made sense to me, but it was difficult to communicate that and help them to see that. So
Wow.
that was a tough thing to get over, that hurdle.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. So maybe talk to me just a little bit about why did you adopt and what has it been like to raise a multicultural family? Like, what are the joys and hard parts of that? As much as you can share with protecting their, privacy and all that.
The reason we adopted, Brenda and I talked about when we first got married, we said, we want to have children, but we'd also like to adopt. I was raised in a family of 6 kids. I have 5 siblings, but my parents brought in foster kids.
Yeah.
So I was surrounded by foster kids my whole life. And so that was just a natural thing for me. Yeah, we need to help others, and adopting was obvious for us that we would do that. And Brenda agreed with that. Then we found out we were not able to have our own children,
Right.
so adoption becomes even more of a big option. So, and the reason we went, we sort of fell into the multicultural thing in that we were working through an agency, and they had a young girl who was American Indian, and they were having trouble placing this child. And so they talked to us, and we said, hey, your dad worked for American, I forget what it's called, the government helping the Indians I can't remember the name of the organization, but my dad worked on different Indian reservations.
Okay.
And so because they knew that, they said, would you be interested? And we said, sure, no problem. In our mind, there was no difference.
Right.
Okay.
Do you know what tribe she belonged to?
No, it was up in Utah someplace.
Okay.
But she had moved down here.
Okay.
And then when for Caleb, my mom had opened up her home to Caleb's birth mother.
Okay.
And so we knew her, and we were just going through the regular adoption process again. And she placed her child for adoption, and they gave her, five
family
options, and they had non-identifying information on them.
Right.
Well, she knew exactly when she read ours, oh, that's Rick and Brenda.
Right.
I want that one.
Right.
So she chose us.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool.
And so then for Hadassah, it was a slam dunk. Of course, we're open.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, it's different because I personally didn't see a difference. I was wrong. There is a difference, especially for an African American. Caleb has struggled some with the way that white society treats him.
Yeah.
And growing up, we had no idea that was an issue.
Right.
And that's where we failed a little bit with raising him. We should have been more active in helping him understand the struggles that white and black have. Yeah.
Wow. That's just a ministry in itself of just adoption and they're such a blessing. Kids.
Yeah. But we love them all.
Yes, we do. We love them all. Well, that is really cool. And so they were all little during the church plant, I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
kind of. Well, no, I guess.
No, Hadassah was in middle school.
Okay, so the two older were not little.
Yeah.
They may have been one of the Josh
was while we were doing that, he joined the Army.
That's right. So he was so they were older. So yeah, wow. Okay. So you church plant thing doesn't work.
No.
You're like, okay. So you go from there to where?
So when that church failed, Desert Hills was looking for a youth pastor CE guy. And so they contacted me, and I said, yes, I'd love to. So I went back to Desert Hills.
Went back home.
I went back home.
And how long were you there?
I was there for, I think, 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
But while I was there, the senior pastor who brought us there had some medical issues, and he had to retire. And so he left, and the church went through a new search. During that search, I was the interim pastor. Again, realized how much I didn't like being the senior pastor. I'd rather be the youth pastor. And then when they hired the new guy, the church had, I guess I had shrunk it so badly that it didn't have enough money to keep me on. And so they said, we got to let you go.
Okay.
And so I started working at Target, and that's where I am now.
So you started working at Target in Phoenix.
Yes.
And you were doing volunteer youth work there and helping out a youth pastor. Well, you were kind of the volunteer youth pastor for a little bit at Desert Hills? No?
Early, right at the start when we first moved to Phoenix.
Okay. But not... Okay. So once you stepped down from that job, where did you head from when you...
Well, then my wife got a job here in Tucson.
Okay, so you
so we moved back to Tucson.
And that was 2012. So you've been in Tucson since 2012.
Yeah.
Working at Target.
Yeah.
And you are now at which Target?
At the Elcon store on Broadway.
At the Elcon store. So if you're a villager or a Faith Over Breakfast listener and you go there, look for Rick and say, hey, I listened to your podcast.
Yeah, there you go. And go this week and you'll be, it's like Christmas there. Every single checkout lane was open when I left the store just a little while ago.
Is it because people are filling their dorms up?
Yeah, it's back to college stuff. So
college.
The place is a mess.
So what do you do at Target?
I'm supposed to be working on the presentation team.
Okay.
So when you go to a store and you can't find the thing that you're looking for because it's not in the same place it was before, that's my fault.
Because you moved it.
Because I moved it.
Because there's some theory behind me hunting for it.
That's right. No, so I tear down an aisle and I restock it and make it look pretty again.
Okay. All right. That fits in a little bit of your talent and your enjoyment of things. And so what are you doing? You're still in ministry, though, right now. I mean, I'm
still work with the youth group at the church that we attend now.
Okay. What church do you?
Grace Community Church.
Okay. There's two of those, right? Or one? No. You're part of the covenant.
It's part of the covenant denomination.
Right.
So it's Grace Community Covenant Church is on the northwest side of Tucson.
Okay.
And then East Side Covenant is on Camino Seco and just north of Broadway.
Okay. So in our last conversation, I actually had a few questions that I didn't get to ask you. I was thinking through. So one was, as you work with youth, like what are some of the things that you really enjoy doing with them? Like what's the highlight of working with high schoolers? You're like, yeah, this is the thing.
The thing that really sets me off is seeing their eyes glow once they understand something in Scripture. When I can explain something to them and they go, oh, really? Wow, I've never, they've never seen that before. They never understood that before. And their eyes are open to how great God is and what God's doing and how he worked in the past. That's the big thing for me, to see them catch that image of God. But then I love to have fun with them too. So I love, in fact, they joke at my church right now that I'm the game guy. So if you need a good game to play with the youth, call Rick.
Call Rick.
Rick knows what to do.
Rick has a lot of games.
Yeah.
I do remember playing a lot of games in youth group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the interesting thing about the way you led youth group is I don't know if there ever was an in-between, right? It was either extreme serious and we're talking about Jesus and we're talking about God, or it's extreme fun. Like it's, there isn't a middle, which is kind of a little bit from my memory of your personality, right? I mean, you're dramatic.
Yeah.
Which is a big thing that you do a lot of. How many plays have you written?
I've written 7 murder mysteries.
Okay.
That we use as fundraisers for the youth.
Okay.
So the people come to a dinner, we serve them dinner, and then we have actors move from table to table, sharing information about the murder mystery.
Okay, and they're trying to deduce what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've written 7 of those, and then I've written a Christmas musical that's for the stage.
Right. And that integrates Christmas songs. Because I remember asking, you wrote music. You're like, no. It's around the Christmas carols.
use all my favorite Christmas songs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then I've written a interactive journey kind of thing with that. It's called Bethlehem Quest, where the people come, they're met by a shepherd who takes them to the fields of Bethlehem, and the angel appears, and then they go on a quest to find the baby in a manger.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So our church is doing that again, so if anybody wants to come, that's going to be on December 8th, Friday night.
All right. Well, we will highlight that as we get closer. You'll need to email me to remind me.
Okay.
So the big thing that you told me, I was like, oh, wow, is that you were last week going to hit the send button on your book that you were.
Yes.
Did you hit the send button?
I did. I sent it in.
All right. So what's the title? And maybe you could give people a little bit of background on this book you wrote.
Well, thank you. I'd love to.
I was telling my wife about it. And my mom, and they're like, huh. Nobody does write about James, but anyway.
Yeah.
So tell us, what's the book about?
It's called The Nazareth Trial.
Okay.
All right. We call it, when we read it in the Bible, in the Gospels, we call it Nazareth.
Right.
But I believe that it should have been Netzareth.
Okay.
Because in Hebrew, there are no vowels.
Right.
So it's just the consonants. And instead of a Z consonant, it should be a TZ consonant. And I can't remember what that is actually called in Hebrew. But so Netzer is the word for shoot. So in Isaiah, when it says a shoot will come out of the stump of Jesse.
Right.
Okay, and it's talking about the Messiah. I believe that the Netzarim, the people who lived in Nazareth, were of the Essene order.
Right.
They believed that, and they were all descendants of David, and they believed that the Messiah would come through them. And so they had this very big view of themselves. And that's why in the Gospels it says, well, what good can come from Nazareth?
Right.
You know, it's because, those people, they think so much of it. Yeah,
right.
they think they're the answer.
Right.
Nah, they're not. And yet they were, because Mary and Joseph were in Nazareth, and God came to them and said, hey, have my child. And so the story of the Nazareth trial takes place during Passion Week, from the triumphal entry to the resurrection. And what happens in Nazareth during that time is similar to what is happening in Jesus' life. The people in Nazareth find out about the triumphal entry, and they start to worry. Oh, no. If he's claiming to be the Messiah, if he's riding in as a king, the Romans are going to get upset. And they're going to come to his hometown to find out what's going on, and they might give us trouble.
Right.
And so they're worried about the Roman threat.
Right.
And so they go to Jesus's brother, his half-brother, James, and they say, hey, help us understand what we need to do. Because at that point, Nazareth has disavowed any connection to Jesus.
Yes.
They've said, no, we don't believe he's the Messiah. And so they're up in arms about this whole thing. James then has to struggle with, he loves his brother. His brother was so kind to him when he lived with him. He did things for him. He was a loving person, and yet now he's claiming to be the Messiah, and I'm not so sure. But yet my mom is traveling with him, and she believes, and whoa, should I? And so it's that whole struggle, that whole trial that James is going through during that week.
Wow.
And a number of things happen. Somebody gets killed, just like Jesus died on the cross.
Right.
He doesn't die on a cross, but he gets killed. And there's major change in understanding in James and his brothers. And, they're in the synagogue at the time of the crucifixion, and so the sun goes dim.
Right.
And they're going, what in the world's going on? And all of that. And so that takes place. It's all about the trial of what happens to James and his family as they're trying to get through this situation.
Right. So it's a historic novel, and you're bringing James to life, which people have not done. I mean, I have heard a lot of talk, and you think about one of the beautiful proofs of Jesus as God is James's conversion, because. Yeah. And so you're bringing more like, well, what was going on in this man's head, and what was happening around him.
And then James becomes the pillar of the Jerusalem church. Yeah. So, how does he go from? In the book of Mark, it says that they thought Jesus was out of his mind, and so they went to try to talk to him, and that's when Jesus says, "Well, who are my mother and brothers? It's these people here."
Right.
Yeah.
Profound.
Yeah. And so, James feels like he's been disowned a little, and yet he becomes the pillar of the church.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just remarkable.
Yeah, something had to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always like what Andy Stanley says about, like, if your brother says that you're God, maybe maybe we should think about it.
Yeah.
But James had to come to that, and Jude also. But that's really cool. So what got you thinking I'm gonna write a book and I'm gonna get it published?
Well, I took a trip while I was still the youth pastor at First Free here in Tucson. Took a trip to Israel.
Okay.
That was organized by Dick Hagelin, one of the pastors at First Free. And while we were there, I believe that's when the idea came upon me that, wait a minute, there's an issue here. And I think it was because we went to visit where the Dead Sea Scrolls were.
Okay.
And the idea is that possibly where the Dead Sea Scrolls were written out, that it was probably the Essenes who did that.
Yeah.
And so that got me thinking about that whole concept of, could Jesus have been an Essene, raised as an Essene, but then when he started his ministry, he went to Capernaum, which is the seat of Pharisaical teaching.
Right.
So that's why they didn't like him, because he left them to go be with the Pharisees.
Right. That's well, I mean, and I think people like N.T. Wright and others, first century historians are starting to say, well, it's obvious that Jesus had some relationship with the Essenes. Like we can't say he didn't, so we don't know. But I like your theory is that that's where he grew up.
Yeah,
because then he moves to the more Pharisaical or those schools, and so and he's in that environment.
Yeah, and a lot of people look at the Gospels and they say, but he's constantly ragging on the Pharisees. Well, he's doing that because he's part of them.
Right. Yeah.
He's moved in with them because they had the people's ears.
Yes.
And so so that's why he felt he needed to set them straight on a number of issues.
Yeah. I've just been reading a book which I think is absolutely profound, called A God Named Josh, that goes through a lot of this. It's a really I would recommend that anybody read it, because it's written for the everyday reader. It's not as academic as maybe trying to take on Jesus and the People of God by N.T. Wright or something like that. So anyway, so that's cool. So you wrote this book, and I'm looking forward. When's it going to come out?
I have no idea. They are looking at it right now. They are. It's in editorship right now.
Okay, so they got to read it, edit it,
and create a back cover and a front cover and all of that. Yeah.
So did you send it to them with your author description and all that kind of stuff? And you've got people to endorse your book and all that kind of stuff?
No, I don't have that.
Gotcha. Well, maybe someday, soon you'll find some people to endorse it. And that'll be fun. So one of the questions that we talked about, and I really would love to explore just a little bit before it gets too hot in the podcast, is you have been doing youth ministry since the mid 80s, and in some ways you could say you've been doing it since the beginning of the 80s in one way or another.
Well, mid 70s, because while I was at seminary, I was working with youth.
So even better. Yeah. You'd say you've been doing youth ministry since 1975. What are some of the changes that you've seen in the way that children, how high schoolers relate, what's kind of changed in what they value, that kind of thing? Like maybe you could just kind of talk a little bit about what you've seen over the years.
The first thing is they have youth today are so much more busy than the youth of the 70s, 80s. In the 70s, 80s, you could call a youth and say, "Hey, let's go out and get a drink. Let's go to McDonald's and let's talk." Now, no, they've got things scheduled out, and they are constantly busy doing school stuff and sports and clubs and all different kinds of things. Yeah, they are. It's a busy time.
Yes,
to be a teenager. And I think that busyness also creates a lack of a touchstone with religion, with spiritual life. It seems like the youth of the last 10 years have so much going on that they've got little time to spend thinking about who Jesus is to them, what God means to them in their life right now, developing spiritual disciplines and thinking about how am I going to serve God? What am I going to do to give back to God for all He's given me? That whole concept is why? Right. Why should I think about that stuff? I got other stuff I got going on.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's the busyness and the disconnect at some level to spiritual relationship at all at any level. So I mean, I'm assuming you had just a lot more relational touch points in the 80s and maybe even in the 90s probably than you have now. So what other things, are there things that you're concerned about as you work with youth now that maybe you didn't even think about when you were first started?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer for that. I still love youth. I love being with them, and I don't get a sense of antagonism, towards me or towards what I'm trying to do when I'm teaching and that kind of stuff. But so it's still a joy to be with them.
Right. No, that is. Well, and Rick, I think that's what I really always loved about you is that you're really present. You're all in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you love kids so much. And that's like God has obviously just dropped that on you. It's a God-given thing. People experience Jesus that way. Do you I guess what are you looking forward to as you kind of, this is what your early 60s, I guess?
63.
63. Yep. What are you hopeful for in the next few years as you do ministry and live life? And
yeah, I during my ministry at First Free here in Tucson, we were at a conference and I was worshiping God, and a vision came across my mind of me standing on Mount Lemmon at that lookout point and looking down at the city of Tucson, and Jesus was hovering above Tucson, and he spread out his arms over the city, and in a gesture of, Rick, this is yours. I give this to you. Make an impact. Impact has always been a strong word for me. I want to make a positive impact on the youth of this city. And I think, what's coming up for me, what I'm still hoping for, is to see how all of those different people that I ministered to, how they will carry on that idea of impact, like you have with starting the village and working with this ministry. And then other people that came through the youth ministry and how they've gotten involved in different ministries and worked with God and developed. All of that I see as God blessing me with that impact that, all these youth have had. And so that's what I still look forward to. I look forward to still the impact that I can have on Tucson.
Yeah, that's really cool. I remember when we were talking about this last week, you reminded me that was the name of our youth group.
Yes, it was.
Impact. And yeah. I was like, oh yeah, I completely forgotten that. Wow. Well, Rick, this has been really great.
It has.
How did you end up finding Faith Over Breakfast? Like, I don't, you just started emailing us. I don't know if, like, I don't think I told you, and I think I randomly have seen you on occasion at Target.
Yeah. I don't remember how I found it.
But you did.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you so much for your support and the way you ask us questions and make us think about things and things like that. So.
Well, thank you. Well, I appreciate this opportunity you've given me to come in and share this. I love podcasts. I listen to podcasts all the time when I'm driving.
Wow.
When I'm at work even. So I love what you guys have done here with Faith Over Breakfast and the discussions you have, because you're talking about just normal everyday life.
Yeah.
You know, now it's everyday life for a pastor, but it's still, it has an impact with everybody else who is living this Christian life.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I don't know if you're open to this, but maybe next week I could flip it over to you and maybe you could just ask me a bunch of questions if you'd like to, if you want to. I mean, this is your opportunity to get me to talk about whatever you want me to talk about. Yeah, cool.
That would be awesome.
I would love that. And you could just be the stand-in for Andy because he's not going to be back till September. So thank you, Rick, so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so we always do the beginning at the end. So.
Right.
You've been listening to Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Eric Cepin and Pastor Andy Littleton. Please share us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thank you.